All right, these are the 7.4 notes for trig. We're going to be doing solving trig equations. This is very similar to what we did in our 7.1 notes when we were looking for answers around the unit circle. So for this stuff, we're going to be working in radians. Notice here it says 0 to 2 pi. So just make sure that you're using the radian values, which are just the pi's. And then you need your unit circle handy. Remember that cosine is x, sine is y, and tangents are these far outside values. So again, cosine, sine, and tangent. All right, let's look at our first example. Example number 1 says, find all solutions on the interval 0 to 2 pi. We have cosine of theta equals 1/2, so we're looking for where x is 1/2. We'll go to the unit circle. Look at each of your x values until you find one that's 1/2, and then you're going to write down the pi value. Here's my first one that I find, 1/2. So I'll write down pi over 3. Circle all the way around. I'm not looking for the negatives, so that one doesn't count right here. All the way around the bottom, and then I finally find another one right here where x is 1/2, 5 pi over 3. So my answers will be pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. You'll write those into delta math with a comma. Example number 2 is your tangent. Remember, tangents are the far outside values. So we're looking for anywhere where tangent is radical 3 over 3. So back to the unit circle. Radical 3 over 3 happens right here, pi over 6. And down here, 7 pi over 6. Pi over 6 and 7 pi over 6. A lot of these are going to have two answers, but not all of them. Example number 3 is the y value, sine, where is y -1? So you look to your unit circle. Y is -1. That actually only happens one place around the unit circle, right down here. So you have just one answer of 3 pi over 2. All right. Then for the next couple problems, we're actually going to have to solve just like we do with regular linear equations. So your goal is to get the sine, cosine, or tangent by itself. So for example number 4, I'm going to start by dividing by 2. That way the sine is by itself, sine of theta. And then I end up with negative square root of 3 over 2. You should have an answer that's on your unit circle. So then you can go look for your unit circle. You're looking for your y values. Oops. Y values negative radical 3 over 2. Here's one. Here's the other. So 4 pi over 3 and 5 pi over 3. All right, example number 5. Again, we're going to solve for cosine. So I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. Three over 2, I'm going to go ahead and change that into a mixed number. 2 goes into 3 one time. And then I have 1 left over out of the same denominator, 2, 1.5. You could also do that by doing 1.5 and subtracting the 1. Either way, I'm going to get a positive 1/2. If you decide to use a decimal, just make sure you change it back into a fraction because we know we don't have any decimals on our unit circle. Then divide by -1, which I'm just going to do by changing the signs on both sides. -1/2 equals positive cosine. Take a moment now that we've solved for cosine, go to your unit circle and try to find the locations where cosine, or x, is -1/2 and write them down. You should have written down 2 pi over 3 and 4 pi over 3. All right, for example, 6 and 7, here we are introducing squares, so cosine squared and tangent squared in our equations. So your steps are off to the side. Get the sine squared, cosine squared, tangent squared by itself, and then make sure you square root it. When you square root something, don't forget the plus or minus sign. Really important as we solve equations, when we square root something, we have to put a plus or minus sign. All right, let's start by dividing by 4. I'm going to reduce the fraction 2/4 to 1/2. And then I'm going to square root both sides. When I square root a fraction, I actually square root both of them individually. On the cosine side, the square root and the square cancel out, getting us just cosine of theta equals. So we know we're good on that side. And then over here, before I forget, I'm going to put my plus or minus sign. You can take the square root of 1 to get 1. The square root of 2, that would give you a decimal if you did it on your calculator, so we want to leave it the square root of 2. The problem is on your unit circle, there is no answers where you have 1 over square root of 2. Remember, square roots are not allowed in the denominator. So if that happens, you will have to rationalize, which we did quite a bit earlier this semester. So I'll multiply by the square root of 2 over the square root of 2, so the denominator on the top and bottom. One times the square root of 2 is the square root of 2. And square root of 2 times the square root of 2 gets me the square root of 4, which just turns into 2. Remember, our shortcut rule was when you see the same number and you have both of them as square roots, you can just cancel out the square roots and keep the number. All right, so now it's time to look at our unit circle. So the plus or minus sign tells us we're looking for all the positives and negatives for x. You're looking for anywhere the x is positive radical 2 over 2 or negative radical 2 over 2. All right, so x's, here's 1, pi over 4. Here's another one. Even though it's a negative, it still counts. We want both of them, positives and negatives. Here we are again. And the last one, 7 pi over 4. All right, I'll jot those all down as my answers. Pi over 4, 3 pi over 4. And these can go in any order, it's fine. They're just a list of answers. Okay, good. Example number 7. Start by subtracting 5 from both sides. And then divide by 3. Go ahead and try to get those 2 steps done. Subtract 5, divide by 3. All right, now we're down to tangent squared theta equals 1/3. Remember, we got to get rid of that square, so we're going to square root both sides. Square root those fractions individually. Square root and the square cancel out, leaving us tangent of theta equals. I'm going to put my plus or minus sign. It's one of the most common mistakes, so don't forget to put it. Square root of 1 is 1. Square root of 3 is a decimal, so I leave it square root of 3. And then we rationalize. No square roots in the denominator. So multiply by radical 3 over radical 3. All right, plus and minus the square root of 3 over 3. And again, at this point, you should always end up with something that's on the unit circle. If you get an answer right here that's not on the unit circle, you've made a mistake somehow. So remember, you're looking for all the positive and negative of the tangent where it's radical 3 over 3. Take a look at your unit circle, see if you can find those answers. There are going to be 4 of them. All right, we should have pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6.